The mansion glowed like a palace at the edge of the city, its glass walls reflecting 1,000 lights into the night sky. Inside, silence ruled. For all its luxury, the marble floors, the endless chandeliers, the gold-stitched drapes, the house felt hollow, like a stage set waiting for a performance that never came. At the top of the grand staircase sat a little girl, knees tucked to her chest, her long dark hair falling into her face. Her name was Emily, the only child of billionaire Richard Hawthorne. She was 7 years old, but her eyes had the weight of someone twice her age. She should have been surrounded by friends, laughter, toys scattered across the floor. Instead, she sat alone, staring at the vast emptiness of the hall. "Miss Emily, your father is home," a servant's voice called softly. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the entrance. Richard Hawthorne stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a suit that cost more than most people made in a year. His jaw was sharp, his hair silvering at the temples, and his presence filled the room like thunder. But his daughter did not run to him. She only looked up briefly, her expression unreadable. "Emily," Richard said, forcing a smile. "You're still awake. Past your bedtime." "I was waiting," she whispered. "For what?" "For you." The words struck him, but he brushed them aside quickly. He didn't have time for this, he never did. Richard Hawthorne was a man whose empire spanned industries, a man too busy for bedtime stories or games of hide-and-seek. His daughter was raised by tutors, nannies, and housekeepers. He told himself he was giving her everything: wealth, opportunity, a name that opened doors. But he didn't give her himself. That night, as Richard went to his office, Emily stayed awake, looking out the tall windows at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, beyond the glass towers and glowing billboards, was a world her father never let her see. And in that world, on the cold stone steps of a library long since closed for the night, a young homeless girl sat with a torn book in her hands. Her name was Ava. Her clothes were ragged, her shoes worn through, but her eyes burned with light as she traced the words on the page under the flicker of a street lamp. She had no bed, no roof, no warmth, but she had stories. And stories, she believed, were the only thing that could keep her alive. Her voice whispered the lines out loud, to no one but herself. "Once upon a time," she smiled faintly, the way only someone who still had hope could smile, even in the darkest night. The city might have ignored her, but fate hadn't. Because the lives of Ava, the homeless girl, and Emily, the billionaire's daughter, were about to collide in a way that would shake the walls of power and pride to their very foundations. It began the next morning. Richard was gone before sunrise, as always. Emily sat in the back of the limousine, her small hands folded in her lap. She wasn't going to school that day. Her tutors had cancelled. The driver stopped at a red light near the edge of the business district. Emily, bored, pressed her face to the window. That's when she saw her. A girl about her age, no, maybe a little older, sitting on the curb with a book in her lap. Her hair was messy, her clothes patched, but she was reading with such intensity, it seemed like the world around her didn't exist. Emily couldn't look away. "Who's that?" she asked the driver. The man frowned. "Just a street kid, Mississippi don't stare." But Emily did. And in the instant the light turned green, her eyes met Ava's. It was only a second, but it was enough. The billionaire's daughter and the homeless girl shared a glance that would change everything. That evening, Emily slipped out of the mansion. She had never done it before, never even dared. But something in her wouldn't let go. She needed to see the girl with the book again. She needed to know who she was. She walked for blocks, her expensive shoes clicking against cracked sidewalks, until she found her, Ava, sitting under the same street lamp reading. "You like books?" Emily said shyly. Ava looked up, startled. "What are you doing here? You'll get in trouble." "I wanted to talk to you." The two girls studied each other, worlds apart yet strangely connected. "Do you go to school?" Emily asked. Ava shook her head. "Not anymore. But I teach myself. From whatever I can find." She lifted the tattered book. "Books don't care if you're rich or poor. They talk to everyone the same." Emily's heart squeezed. Nobody had ever said something like that to her before. "Can you teach me?" Emily whispered. Ava blinked. "Teach you? You live in a mansion. You have tutors." Emily shook her head. "They teach me numbers, rules, manners. Not this." She pointed at the book. "Not the way you read. Like the words are alive." For the first time in a long time, Ava smiled. That was how it began. A secret friendship, hidden from the world. Every night, Emily snuck out, and every night, Ava taught her. Not just reading and stories, but life, survival, the strength of hope. But secrets never stay hidden for long. One night, Richard came home early. He found Emily's bed empty. Panic twisted into rage as he ordered the staff to search the grounds. When they finally dragged Emily home, Richard's face was pale with fury. "Where were you?" he demanded. Emily's lips trembled. "I was with my friend." "What friend?" She hesitated. "Ava." The name meant nothing to him, but the defiance in his daughter's eyes did. Richard clenched his fists. "You are never to see her again," he thundered. "Do you understand?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. "But she teaches me things you don't." The room went silent. The words hit Richard like a blade. A billionaire, a man who commanded entire corporations, stood speechless before the truth of a child. But instead of listening, he hardened. "This conversation is over." Emily ran to her room, slamming the door. But Richard couldn't sleep. Those words echoed in his head. "She teaches me things you don't." And deep down, though he would never admit it, he feared they were true. The next night, Emily disobeyed again. She returned to Ava, desperate, her heart pounding with both fear and determination. "I can't stop seeing you," she said. "He doesn't understand. But I need you." Ava's face darkened. "If he finds out, he'll hate me. People like him, they don't see us. We're invisible. Or worse." Emily shook her head fiercely. "No. You're my friend. You're the only one who sees me." The two girls held hands in the dark, unaware that from across the street, a man was watching. One of Richard's security guards, following orders. By the next morning, Richard knew everything. He summoned his daughter to his office, his face like stone. "You will never see that girl again," he said coldly. "Do you understand me?" Emily stood tall, surprising even herself. "Then you don't understand me." The words shattered something in him. For the first time, Richard saw his daughter not as a child, but as someone slipping beyond his reach. He slammed his fist on the desk. "Enough!" But Emily didn't cry. She looked him straight in the eye. "If you take her away from me, you'll lose me too." And in that moment, Richard Hawthorne, billionaire, empire builder, untouchable, felt powerless. Because the homeless girl he despised was teaching his daughter something he never could, courage. And the storm that was coming would force him to face it. The question wasn't whether Ava would change Emily's life. It was whether she would change Richard's. Because fate was about to place them all in the same room. And when it did, secrets long buried would rise to the surface. The billionaire thought he could control his daughter's world. But the truth was slipping through his fingers. And the night that truth exploded would leave everyone stunned. As Richard's limousine pulled up to the mansion gates the next evening, he saw them. Emily and Ava, together, standing defiantly in the headlights. And behind them, more figures were stepping out of the shadows. If you think the story ends here, you're wrong. Because what those headlights revealed next would turn the entire Hawthorne empire upside down. Stay with me, because next will shock you even more. And if you don't want to miss what happens when a billionaire finally faces the truth, make sure you're subscribed right now. The headlights cut through the night, bright as a spotlight on a stage, and Richard Hawthorne's heart froze. There, standing at his mansion's gates, was his daughter Emily. And beside her, clutching her hand, was the homeless girl, Ava. Richard slammed the car door and stormed forward, his shoes crunching against the gravel. "Emily!" His voice cracked like a whip. "Get inside this instant." But Emily didn't move. Her chin lifted, her eyes fierce. Not without Ava. For a moment, Richard could only stare. His daughter, who had always been obedient, always quiet, now stood against him with a defiance that burned like fire. "You don't belong here," Richard snapped at Ava. "Whatever spell you've cast on my daughter ends tonight. Do you understand?" Ava flinched, but didn't let go of Emily's hand. "I didn't cast anything. She came to me. She asked me to teach her." "Teach her?" Richard laughed bitterly. "You're nothing. You sleep on sidewalks. What could you possibly teach my daughter?" Emily's voice rang sharp. "More than you ever have." The words cut him deeper than a blade. For a second, Richard's mask cracked. He felt the sting of truth, but shoved it down, smothering it with anger. "You're coming inside now, Emily. And you," he jabbed a finger at Ava, "will disappear from this property and never return." Ava's eyes filled with pain, but before she could answer, a voice rose from the shadows. "She's not going anywhere." Richard spun. Figures were emerging from the darkness. 3, 4, then half a dozen. Men and women, clothes worn, faces weathered. Homeless, poor, invisible to the world he ruled. They stepped forward, not threatening, but unyielding. One of them, an older woman with grey streaks in her hair, spoke. "That girl has more dignity than you'll ever buy with your money. She belongs wherever she chooses to stand." Richard's security team rushed forward, but Emily's voice stopped them cold. "If you touch her, I'll scream. And I'll never forgive you." The guards hesitated, glancing at Richard. For the first time in years, Richard felt control slipping through his fingers. His empire, his rules, his house, all suddenly felt small against the courage of a child and the loyalty of strangers. He grabbed Emily's wrist, trying to pull her away, but she wrenched free. "Stop treating me like I'm yours to control. You don't even know me, Dad. You don't even try." The crowd gasped. Ava's eyes widened. Richard froze. He opened his mouth, but no words came. For the first time, Richard Hawthorne, the billionaire whose voice commanded boardrooms and broke rivals, was silent. The grey-haired woman stepped closer. "You've built walls so high, Mr. Hawthorne, you can't even see your own child. But she sees us. She sees what you've forgotten." Richard's jaw tightened. He turned to his guards. "Clear them out." Emily stepped in front of Ava, arms spread wide. "No." The guards hesitated again. The air thickened with tension. Even the night seemed to hold its breath. Richard pointed at Ava. "If you care about my daughter, you'll leave her alone. Don't drag her into your world of filth." Ava's hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "She's already in it. Because your world doesn't give her what she needs." "Enough," Richard roared. "You don't know anything about my world." "Neither do you," Ava shot back. "You hide in it, behind glass walls and money. But you don't live in it. You don't see people. Not even her." She pointed at Emily. The silence that followed was unbearable. Richard's chest heaved, his fists clenched, but his daughter's eyes held him like chains. And then, Emily whispered the words that shattered him. "I wish Ava was my father instead of you." The world seemed to stop. The guards looked away. The crowd shifted. Richard's face drained of color. He had conquered enemies, crushed competitors, commanded millions. But 7 words from his daughter undid him. "Emily," his voice was hoarse. "You don't mean that." "Yes, I do." The little girl turned, took Ava's hand, and walked toward the gates. Richard stood frozen, unable to stop her. The mansion behind him felt suddenly hollow, colder than ever before. But as they stepped into the night, headlights flared again. This time from a sleek black car pulling up behind Richard's limousine. The door opened, and a man stepped out. Tall, sharp suit, eyes cold as glass. One of Richard's business rivals. "Well, well," the man sneered. "What a sight. Richard Hawthorne, begging for the love of his own child, while she runs off with a beggar." The crowd stiffened. Richard's face hardened. "What are you doing here, Whitmore?" he growled. The rival smirked. "I came to deliver a message. But it seems you've already lost everything that matters. Perhaps I should thank this girl for doing my work for me." His eyes lingered on Ava, and a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. "Careful," he murmured. "You don't know what you've stepped into, girl. You may have the child's heart, but you've made powerful enemies tonight." Ava's pulse quickened, but she stood her ground. "I'm not afraid of you." Whitmore chuckled darkly. "You will be." He turned to Richard. "Your empire is already crumbling, old friend. And now, your daughter prefers a street rat to you. Tell me, how long before the world sees what I see? That you're weak. That you're finished." Richard's fists shook. He wanted to lunge, to silence him. But his daughter's hand in Ava's stopped him. Because in that moment, Richard saw the truth. Power wasn't in money or fear. It was in love, loyalty, courage. And he had none of it. Whitmore leaned close, his voice a whisper meant for Richard alone. "Watch her carefully. Because the more you push her toward that girl, the more she'll become the one thing you can't control." He stepped back, smirk still curling on his lips, and returned to his car. Within seconds, the rival was gone, leaving only the echo of his poison words. Emily looked up at her father. "I'm not leaving her, Dad. No matter what you say." Richard's chest rose and fell, his mind torn between rage and fear. He could drag his daughter back, lock her away, erase Ava from her life. But something in his gut told him it wouldn't work this time. Because Emily wasn't a child to be controlled anymore. She was becoming something he didn't recognize. Something stronger. And Ava was the spark that lit the fire. Richard clenched his fists, whispering under his breath. "Then I'll burn the spark out myself." But what he didn't know was that the fire had already spread beyond his reach. The next day, the city would talk. Reporters would dig. Secrets would surface. And when they did, Richard Hawthorne wouldn't just be fighting for his daughter. He'd be fighting for his empire. Because Ava was about to reveal something no one expected. And when she did, the billionaire's world would shatter. The next morning, headlines exploded across the city. "Mystery girl challenges billionaire Hawthorne. What is she hiding?" And as Richard read the paper with shaking hands, Ava stepped onto the steps of City Hall, holding something that glowed in the sunlight. A single, folded letter that could destroy everything he had built. You think you know where this story is going? You don't. Because what Ava reveals in Next won't just shock Richard. It will change Emily's life forever, and leave an entire city stunned. Don't miss it. Hit subscribe now, because this storm is only getting started. The city had woken to whispers. By noon, the whispers had become a roar. Newspapers screamed with bold headlines about the mysterious homeless girl who had walked hand in hand with Emily Hawthorne, the billionaire's daughter. Television anchors replayed grainy footage, captured on cell phones outside the mansion gates. Social media lit up with theories, hashtags, and outrage. Who is she? Some asked. A fraud, others insisted. But many more asked, why does the child of one of the world's wealthiest men look at her like family? Richard Hawthorne sat in his office, the skyline sprawling beneath him, the paper shaking in his hands. His phone buzzed non-stop, board members demanding answers, investors panicking, his rival Whitmore already fanning the flames in the press. His empire trembled, not from economic collapse, but from a single girl's presence. And that girl now stood at the steps of City Hall, with Emily by her side. A sea of reporters surged forward, cameras flashing, microphones thrust toward Ava's face. She wore no fine dress, no jewelry, no armor but her courage. Her clothes were simple, her hair pulled back, her eyes wide yet steady. Emily clung to her hand like a lifeline. Who are you to the Hawthorne family? A reporter shouted. Is it true you've been teaching his daughter? Another pressed. Why would she choose you over her own father? Ava hesitated, her throat tight, her heart pounding like a drum. She had never stood before so many eyes. She wanted to run, but Emily squeezed her hand, and Ava remembered every night spent shivering in the cold, every moment of invisibility, every cruel sneer from people who thought she was nothing. She took a deep breath and raised her voice. My name is Ava. I am homeless. I live on the streets you walk past every day. And yes, Emily asked me to teach her. The crowd erupted. Richard watched from his office screen, his jaw tightening. He wanted to storm down there, silence her, drag Emily away. But he couldn't, not in front of the world. Not without looking like the tyrant they already suspected he was. Ava continued. I didn't ask to be part of her life. She came to me. She wanted to know how to see the world differently, how to listen, how to notice the things no one else does. So I taught her what I knew, because no one else would. Her voice cracked but didn't break. You think being poor means being worthless. But we see things you don't. We see hunger. We see pain. We see people, because we can't afford to ignore them. The crowd hushed, the weight of her words cutting through the noise. And then Ava reached into her pocket. From it, she pulled a folded letter. The cameras zoomed in. The paper looked old, fragile, its edges worn from being read too many times. This, Ava said, her hand trembling slightly, is from my mother. The words struck like thunder. She unfolded it, her voice steady though her eyes shimmered with tears. My mother worked for Richard Hawthorne years ago. She was a maid in his mansion. She gave everything, her time, her health, her dreams, to serve that house. And when she became sick, she was discarded, left with nothing. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emily's grip on Ava's hand tightened. My mother died believing no one would ever hear her story. But she left me this letter. And in it, she wrote the truth. Ava's voice rose, fierce now. Richard Hawthorne built his empire, not only on business, but on breaking people like her. He crushed the weak and threw them away. And I will not let her voice be buried. The crowd exploded. Shouts of anger, cries for justice, reporters shouting questions like arrows. Richard slammed his fist against his desk, the screen rattling. His secretary rushed in. Sir, this is everywhere. Stocks are falling. The media. Shut it down. Richard roared. Pay them off, silence them. I don't care what it takes. But deep inside, fear coiled like a snake. Because he remembered the maid. He remembered the woman whose eyes begged for mercy. And he remembered turning away. Down at City Hall, Ava finished reading the letter aloud. Her voice broke at the final line. Tell them, Ava. Tell them what they did to me. Tears slid down her cheeks. The crowd fell into stunned silence. Emily hugged her tightly, whispering, You did it. She'd be proud. The reporters surged again, questions flying, but Ava raised a hand. This isn't just about me. Or my mother. It's about everyone who's ever been treated like nothing by people who think money makes them better. It's about every voice that was silenced. I won't be silent anymore. The crowd erupted into cheers, chants rising. Justice. Justice. Richard's rival Whitmore appeared suddenly on the steps, seizing the moment. She's right, he declared loudly. For years, Richard Hawthorne has hidden his crimes behind gold and glass. But the truth is out. His reign ends now. The crowd roared louder. Cameras turned to him. Ava stared, realizing he wasn't here to support her. He was here to use her. Whitmore raised his arms, the perfect politician. This girl has given us the truth. And I, for one, will not let it die in the shadows. Richard Hawthorne must answer for this. The mob roared. Emily tugged Ava's sleeve, whispering urgently, "He's twisting it. He doesn't care about you. He just wants to destroy my dad." Ava's chest tightened. She hadn't expected this. She had wanted her mother's voice heard, justice for what was taken. But now the truth was being swallowed by politics, by power games. The crowd surged forward, pushing closer. Security rushed in, trying to hold them back. Reporters screamed for Ava to say more. Flashbulbs blinded her. Emily clung to her hand, terrified. And then, above the chaos, Ava's voice rang out again. "I'm not here for Whitmore. I'm not here for politics. I'm here for my mother." The crowd hushed. Cameras swung back to her. "I don't want revenge. I want change. I want every worker treated with respect. I want every child to know they matter more than money. That's what this is about. Not destroying Richard Hawthorne, but forcing him to see what he's ignored." Her words echoed, powerful, undeniable. For the first time, she wasn't just a girl in rags. She was a leader. And across the city, in his glass tower, Richard's face went pale. Because he knew, deep down, he couldn't silence her. Not anymore. The press conference spiraled into frenzy. Chants shook the steps. Headlines spread within seconds. And in the middle of it all, Ava stood taller than she ever had before. But as the crowd dispersed and night began to fall, Emily noticed something chilling. A black SUV, parked across the street, engine running. Men inside, watching Ava with cold, unblinking eyes. Emily whispered, "Ava, do you see that?" Ava turned, her stomach dropping. Because she recognized one of the men. He wasn't press. He wasn't police. He was from Richard's security team. And his orders were clear. The game had changed. As the SUV's door opened, and a man stepped out, the crowd unaware, Ava realized this wasn't over. Richard wasn't going to let her destroy him in public. He was coming for her, tonight. You think Ava's speech changed everything? You're wrong. Because Richard Hawthorne isn't done yet. He's about to strike back, and what happens next will test Ava in ways she never imagined. Don't miss next. Subscribe now, because the fight has only just begun. The night air was heavy, thick with the kind of silence that made every sound sharper. Ava walked Emily home after the chaos of the press conference, her heart still racing from the roar of the crowd. For a moment, she let herself believe she had done it, that her mother's voice had finally been heard, that the truth had finally cracked Richard Hawthorne's empire. But Emily's hand trembled in hers, and when Ava looked up, she saw the dark SUV again, parked across the street, waiting. Ava froze. She pulled Emily closer, whispering, "Stay near me." The door of the SUV opened. A tall man in a black suit stepped out, his eyes cold, his jaw sharp. He didn't shout, didn't rush. He just stood there, watching. And then he spoke, his voice low but clear across the empty street. "Mr. Hawthorne wants a word." Emily gasped. "It's his security." "Ava, don't." But Ava already knew. This wasn't a request. It was a warning. She stood her ground. "Tell Richard if he wants to see me, he can come here himself." The man's lips curled into the faintest smile. That wasn't an option. More doors opened. 2 other men stepped out, flanking him. The night swallowed their movements, but their presence was unmistakable. Hunters circling their prey. Emily clung to Ava's arm. "We should run." But Ava shook her head. Running meant fear. Running meant silence. She had vowed never to be silent again. Instead, she squared her shoulders and said, "If Richard wants to intimidate me, he should know by now. I'm not afraid of him." The man's smile faded. "You should be." The city lights flickered off the black windows of the SUV as the men advanced. For a heartbeat, Ava thought this was it. That her fight for truth would end here, in the shadows, swallowed by Richard's power. But then, a sudden flash. Cameras. From across the street, reporters who had followed her from City Hall leapt out, snapping photos, filming video. The men froze, their plans shattered by the glare of lenses. The lead guard hissed into his earpiece, then retreated back into the SUV. Without another word, the vehicle sped off into the night. Ava's knees weakened with relief. Emily held her tightly. "They were going to take you," Emily whispered. Ava stroked her hair. Not while people are watching. Remember that, Emily, truth shines light in the darkest places. That's our shield. But as much as Ava wanted to believe her words, she knew Richard wasn't done. He was waiting. The very next morning, the world exploded again. Headlines screamed with fury, not against Richard, but against Ava. Somehow, private photos of her, blurry and degrading, spread online. Rumors painted her as a liar, a scammer who had manipulated Emily for fame. Blogs called her a fraud, influencers mocked her, hashtags demanded she disappear. Ava stared at the screen in shock, her face pale. I didn't do any of this. Why would they? Emily slammed her tiny fist against the table. It's my dad. He's trying to ruin you. The smear campaign worked fast. Where yesterday she had been a hero, today she was a target. People spat at her on the street. Strangers whispered "faker" under their breath. Even the shelter, where she sometimes slept, told her it was better if she left. Too much attention, too much trouble. For the first time since she'd spoken out, Ava felt the old weight of invisibility returning. Not from being unseen, but from being buried under lies. Still, she didn't break. She stood before another crowd, smaller this time, quieter, and held up her mother's letter again. This is real, she said, her voice raw. No smear, no lie, can erase her words. I will not stop until the truth is known. The crowd applauded softly. Not everyone believed her, but enough did to give her strength. And then came the summons. The court. Richard Hawthorne, billionaire titan, had been called to answer charges filed after Ava's testimony. Workers long silenced began stepping forward, inspired by her courage. Lawsuits mounted. His empire shook. And now, for the first time in his life, Richard was forced to face judgment not in his boardroom, but in a courtroom. The trial began with thunder. Richard sat like a king in exile, his lawyers sharp, his presence colder than ice. Ava sat on the witness bench, Emily beside her, small but unshakable. The gallery overflowed with spectators, cameras streaming every second. The judge, stern and unflinching, called the room to order. The lawyers struck first, Richard's team painting Ava as unstable, a street rat chasing attention. They twisted her mother's letter, questioned her every word, sneered at her past. Miss Ava, one lawyer said, voice dripping with scorn. Are we really to believe a billionaire relied on the testimony of a maid? Ava's fists tightened. For a moment, fear threatened to choke her. But then she looked at Emily, who mouthed, Don't let them win. Ava lifted her chin. Yes, believe it. Because sometimes the people at the bottom see the truth clearer than those at the top. The gallery erupted in murmurs. The judge banged her gavel for silence. Then it was Richard's turn. He rose, tall and commanding, his voice smooth, practiced. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not perfect. But I am no monster. This girl, while tragic in her circumstances, has been manipulated. She is being used by my enemies to destroy me. He turned, locking eyes with Ava. She has been poisoned with lies. And in the end, it is not I who will be remembered as cruel. It will be her. The room buzzed with tension. Ava felt the sting of his words. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was the fight hopeless? Was she nothing but a pawn? Then, the unexpected happened. From the back of the courtroom, a woman stood. Her hair streaked with grey, her face lined by years of struggle. She stepped forward slowly, her hands trembling. Your Honor, she said, her voice breaking. I worked for Richard Hawthorne too. Gasps rippled. More people stood. One after another. Workers. Servants. Faces aged by time, but lit with courage. Each one spoke, their voices weaving a tapestry of pain and truth. Stories of being discarded, mistreated, silenced. Ava watched, tears flooding her eyes. She wasn't alone anymore. The judge listened, her face grave. Mr. Hawthorne, it appears the voices are many. Not just one girl. Not just one letter. But an entire history you tried to bury. Richard's face twisted. For the first time, the mask cracked. His empire of lies trembled under the weight of truth. The verdict came like a thunderclap. Richard Hawthorne, guilty of exploitation, abuse of power, and corruption. You will answer for every life you trampled. The gallery erupted, cheers shaking the walls. Reporters rushed out, headlines already forming. The fall of a tycoon. Emily hugged Ava tightly, whispering, We did it. You made them hear. But Ava shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, Emily. We did it. You gave me the courage. My mother's voice, it's free now. Richard was led away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling behind him. His eyes burned with fury, but no one looked at him with fear anymore. They looked at Ava. The homeless girl who had stood against the most powerful man in the city, and won. And as she stepped outside the courthouse, sunlight spilling across her face, the crowd erupted into chants of her name. Cameras flashed, but this time, she didn't flinch. She smiled, lifting her mother's letter to the sky. The truth had won. But even in victory, Ava knew the fight wasn't just hers. It was for every voice still silenced, every person still unseen. And she vowed she would keep fighting, because justice wasn't a moment. It was a movement. The world watched. The world listened. And Ava's story became theirs. But here's the question that will haunt you tonight. If a homeless girl could take down a billionaire with nothing but courage and truth, what excuse do the rest of us have to stay silent? Think about that. And if you believe stories like Ava's deserve to be heard, then subscribe right now. Because the next story I'll tell might just shake you even harder.